Is my screen visible?
It's getting started, sir.
Okay. Some problem.
Sir, I believe you need to share your entire screen rather
I
than that window.
did that.
Oh, sir. Okay, sir.
I will stop and try again.
Sure, sir.
Is it visible now?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Still, there are some issues. I think something wrong. I'm not able to project fully.
I believe this will work fine, sir.
Yeah, but it's taking a long time.
Yes, yes.
I'm not able to move to the next screen. Some problem, I'm not sure. Don't know what to do.
Sir, are you able to go to
Yes, sir. Your slide is visible.
Yeah, I'm not able to move to the next screen slide.
Um,
Some problem.
uh, but we clearly seeing your slides. There is first slide is element testing and certificate the modeling in the geotechnical
Yeah,
engineering.
it's fine, but I'm not able to move to the next slide.
Um,
I've been teaching for a long time using this same thing.
is it in the slide mode?
Yeah, I'm not able to do that also.
Oh. Mhm.
Sir, is your page up, page down working?
No, that's not working. That's what I'm. What I'll do is log out and try again once.
Okay, sir.
So what I did is I sent the PPT to HOD. Hello?
So would you be able to
Hello?
share the slide
Am I
to me?
audible?
Sir, would you be able to share it
Yeah,
to
yeah.
me?
I sent it to HOD's
Okay, okay.
email.
I will access it from there. I shall operate it from my part.
Yeah, yeah. Please check. It is a PDF file. It's not that good, but I'll try it out.
So we haven't received your email yet. I think there is some network issue over there. Dear participants, please stay back. Robinson sir has faced some technical difficulties. It's trying to resolve it. Sir, I have presented from my side. Sir, your presentation is working fine from my side.
Not able to move to the next screen. That's what. You are presenting?
Yes, sir, I shall proceed. I shall.
Just a moment. Yeah, I think so. You can present.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Sorry for the problem.
It happens, sir. No issue.
So we lost half an hour. Anyway, it's okay. We'll make it up.
Sure, sir.
So good morning to all. So in this presentation, I will talk about the element testing and the centrifuge modeling in geotechnical engineering. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the contents of my presentations are the physical modeling I will discuss. I will highlight the problems with 1G modeling because many researchers and even our students will try to carry out experiments in the laboratory using small scale models. It is not always match the scaling laws. So therefore, for very important projects, it's always better to go for centrifuge modeling. Or if someone is doing 1G modeling, it is fine, but they should be aware of the limitations. That I will highlight. Then I will talk about the element testing. That means if you want to go for a numerical modeling, how to carry out the test, how to determine the parameters. But I will be concentrating on consolidation test and the triaxial test because they are the most important element test in geotechnical engineering. Yeah, next please. Yeah, we all know that soil is a natural material formed by the weathering of rocks. And in the rock cycle, if you see, there will be an item called the sediments. So for geologists, they call it sediments, but for us, it is the soil. The soil may stay in place, and we call it as residual soils, or it may get transported to different locations and deposited. So they are called as transported soils or sedimented soils. So depending upon the mode of transportation and deposition, we will have delta deposits, glacier deposits, dunes, beaches, etc. Next slide. Then the classification, we all know through our undergraduate studies that depending upon the mode of transportation and deposition, we call them as aeolian soils, marine soils, lacustrine soil, alluvial soils, glacial soils, colluvial soils, etc. Next slide, please. Yeah, some soil deposits in India, the alluvial deposits near the river area, we get alluvial deposits. Then the laterites, so I think people in Kerala, you will definitely know what it is. It is extensively used for construction purposes right from the past. Then we have marine deposits. So typical example is a Cochin marine clay, is a typical example of marine deposits in Kerala. Then we have aeolian deposits in the desert region, Rajasthan and other areas. We have aeolian deposits. Then you have the black cotton soil. It's a highly expansive soil. It creates a lot of problems when we construct lightly loaded structures. Next slide. Yeah, some of the soils will not behave the way we want. We call them as problematic soils. The examples are expansive soils, collapsible soils, soft clays, sensitive clays, etc. The photograph on the right side shows the collapsible soil deposit. Next, please. Then in his or her practice, civil engineer has many diverse and important encounters with soils. Next slide. Yeah, the civil engineer uses soil as a foundation to support structures and embankments. So first we do the site investigation, and if the competent soil is at a shallow depth, we will go for shallow foundation. If it is at a deeper depth, we will go for deep foundations. Next. Then we use soil as a construction material. Next slide. The engineer should design structures to retain soil from excavations and underground openings, etc. Next. They encounter soil in several special problems as well. So the typical example is a liquefaction failure. Next. Piping is another example. Next slide. The expansive soils. Next. The subsidence and collapse. Next. This one, the sensitive clays is another example. Next. Yeah. So we have different soil deposits. Some are problematic, some are good soils. Whatever it is, we have to design structures. How to go about the design, we will see. Next slide. Yeah, so typically if you want to design a foundation, we'll ask many questions. So the design is all about asking questions and giving the answer. The first question we'll ask is, what is the depth? Does it require support during excavation? Does it require lowering the water table? Is there a danger of damage to the adjacent buildings? How much the completed building settle during its service time? So these are some of the questions we ask and we have to answer. Next slide. So if it is an earth dam, also we'll ask several questions. Will there be any seeping? If it seeps, what is the seepage rate? What about the slope stability? What about the settlement and piping? All other issues we will ask and try to answer the question. Next, please. I would say sheet pile. Apart from stability, we also check for the seepage loss. Next. Yeah, now how to go about the solutions to geotechnical engineering problems. So for example, the seepage problem we will look at. Next slide. Yeah, by the time we call a seepage problem, immediately the thing come to our mind is flow net. So we draw a series of flow nets and equipotential flow net with equipotential lines and flow lines. Then once you know the flow net, then we can do a lot of calculations. We can calculate the seepage loss. We can calculate the pressure. Everything can be done. Excellent. Yeah, now the methods of solution to flow problems. So we have different methods: analytical methods, numerical method, graphical method, analog methods, and flow models. So in today's talk, we'll spend a little time on the flow models and the analytical method and the numerical method. So for flow models, what we do is we reduce the scale of the field problem and we will do it in a laboratory scale. That we'll elaborate a little more. Next slide. Yeah, this is typically a flow model. So we are trying to simulate a flow model in the laboratory. So the embankment may be a huge embankment. Then to understand its behavior, we do a reduced scale model, bring to the laboratory and make a model and try to find out the flow pattern. So this typically, we construct a dam in a small scale model. We inject a immiscible dye. So this dye will flow along the flow line and we will be able to trace the flow lines. The equipotential lines, if you want to know, we can find out the pore pressure or the water head. Then we can find out the equipotential line as well. Next slide. Yeah, this is the example of a flow model. So you can very clearly see the flow lines in a sandy deposit. This is available in the Lamb and Whitman textbook. So the earlier days, before understanding the basic concepts thoroughly, people did laboratory models. It takes very long time, but these models will give confidence to us how a flow line moves, how a equipotential line comes out, and we will also check whether the Laplace equation is valid. Next slide. Yeah, this is another example taken from Perloff and Barron. So you can see a sheet pile with an excavation, and the water levels are shown there. The dotted line in red shows the equipotential line, and the yellow line shows the dotted line in red gives a water level. So the equipotential line is the line connecting points of equal head. So you can very clearly see the equipotential line, and the flow lines are all shown here. So by this laboratory model, we will be able to understand the flow patterns. Okay, so this is about physical modeling. A big prototype can be simulated in the laboratory, and we try to understand the overall behavior. Next. Other example is the embankment in soft clay. Next slide. Yeah, you can see the failure. So if you observe an embankment in a soft clay, it fails like this. So we can assume the failure plane as a part of a circle, and we can do the analysis. Next. Yeah, coming to the modeling, as I mentioned, we have two models. One is a physical model and mathematical model. Physical model, I have already given you the example. And the mathematical modeling, if you want to do, the first thing we do is understand the failure plane, failure patterns through some means. Then once you know the plastic equilibrium of the whole mass, we apply a mathematical tool to get the factor of safety or the other design parameters. What we need is an element test where we'll identify or determine all the soil parameters. Next. Yeah, then why should we do physical modeling? So the PEC in 1950s itself, we said no theory can be considered satisfactory until it has been adequately checked by actual observations. Therefore, the physical modeling is very much essential whenever we do a theory, because it has to be validated. The physical model means it can be in the laboratory scale, or it can be the full scale in the field. Whatever it is, we should have a confidence with the physical measurements to validate a theory. Therefore, for a successful design or implementation in any field, both the theory and experiments should go hand in hand. Next. Yeah, then let's see what are the problems associated with 1G modeling. Next slide. Yeah, this is an embankment in a soft clay. So we have a prototype with the thickness h, and in a laboratory we do a reduced scale model with a scale factor of h divided by h. This n can be 50 or 100, whatever it is. Next slide. Yeah, unfortunately, I wanted to write something, but it's not possible now. I'll try to explain towards the end. The failure plane, or the slope stability of the prototype is shown on the left side, and the right side shows the model. We can show that the factor of safety of the model will be n times the factor of safety of the prototype. So in other words, if the factor of safety of prototype is 1 and the scaling factor is n, then the factor of safety of the model will be 50, or the value of n. That means the model, the prototype that fails in the field will not fail in the laboratory. The reason is simple. Next slide. Yeah, this gives a clear reason why the laboratory scale models have problem. So we have a prototype in the field with a depth of 16 meter. Let's say the effective unit weight is 6.25 kilonewton per meter cube. The effective overburden pressure or the effective stress increases with the depth, and the stress at the bottom will be 100 kilopascals. Right? The 16 into 6.25 will be 100. Then the same thing if we have a model on the right side. So we reduce the model by 50. Then the same way you can calculate the effective stress at the bottom. That will be only 2 kPa. That means the field, the stress is 100 kPa, but the laboratory it is only 2 kPa. So this is the reason why a prototype the field structure fails. The same if you reduce the scale and simulate in the laboratory, it won't fail because the stress levels are different. The soil is so complicated that it is highly stress dependent. So therefore, if you want to have a proper scaling, you have to make sure that the scaling is properly taken care. In the laboratory also, we have to make sure that the stress at the bottom is 100 kPa. How to do that? The next slide. We can do a centrifuge modeling. So we can keep the soil specimen in the centrifuge. Then by spinning it, the gravity this one artificial gravity can be simulated in the field, and that will cause the failure of model in the laboratory. Next slide. So if we have a prototype of 16 meter and in the field, then the effective stress at the bottom is 100 kPa. The same thing if we keep it in 1G, the stress at the bottom is 200 kPa, 2 kPa. But if we keep it in a centrifuge with a 50 G level, that means the acceleration we are increasing by 50, then the self-weight will cause the model such a way that the stress level at the bottom is 100 kilopascals. That way, the stress level can be clearly simulated. Next slide. So we can also see how the effective stress varies with the depth. The typical clay bed, the effective stress increases with the depth, therefore the water content decreases with the depth. This can be very clearly simulated in the centrifuge. Next slide. Yeah, you can see a small slope failure in the centrifuge. The same model, if you keep it at 1G, it won't fail. But if you keep it in centrifuge and increase the G level, the sample fails. Next slide. Yeah, this is the centrifuge in the National University of Singapore. So the left side one, you see a small model in a container. So that one will be rotated in the centrifuge, and during rotation, the stress level increases and all activities can be done. Next slide. Yeah, this is the control room, because when the centrifuge is spinning, one cannot go in. Therefore, the entire thing has to be properly recorded in a control room. Next slide. Yeah, this is the centrifuge. So I had a video, but I'm not able to play it. Let's see whether towards the end of this lecture, I will be able to do that. Next slide. Yeah, so typical example is shown here. If you want to do a deep excavation, we'll install a diaphragm wall. Let's say the green one is an important structure and we want to excavate on the right side. So during the excavation, we want to monitor the whole thing. Ideally, one can do it in the field, but it will be very, very expensive and time consuming. Therefore, this can be simulated in the laboratory. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, the image shows the model in the laboratory. Next slide. So you can see the scraper that works remotely, and as we excavate, you can see the diaphragm wall, model diaphragm wall moves out. That movement can be easily captured. So continuously run it. Next slide, next slide. Yeah, keep doing. Next slide. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so that way, during the process, we capture the movement and we can plot a graph of the distance versus settlement and so on. So that way, it is possible to simulate the field condition in the laboratory, and we can run any type of test. Okay, next slide. So we can track the movement of the particles, and we can plot the contours or whatever we want, the vector movement, everything can be done. Then one can do a finite element analysis and validate the finite element model. Next slide. Yeah, this again, I had a video, I am not able to run it. Next slide. Yeah, the next part, I will talk about element testing. Next slide. So as I mentioned, element testing, we first identify the potential failure plane and try to take a soil specimen. Then we'll bring it to the laboratory and carry out the test. So shall we take a break for 5 minutes, and I will try to run the slide again.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. So 10:30 I will join back. I'll try to play around with the slide and see whether I can run it. Just 5 minutes.
sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, now the screen is visible, right? Hello?
Yes, sir. It's
Yeah,
visible.
okay. Yeah, at last. We missed the first part, sorry. Shall I continue?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yeah. So now I got control. Yeah. The element testing, what I meant was a earth dam section is shown here, or an embankment is shown here. This is the embankment. The first step is where to identify the failure surface. So this is the failure surface. And for analyzing it, we should understand the property of the soil along this line. Okay. So for that, what we do is we carry out element testing. A typical example is the same embankment problem. This is the failure plane. So to apply the mathematical model, we should understand the properties along these lines. Okay. If you take a small element, the first element will be similar to a triaxial compression test. The one at the bottom here, so this is close to a direct simple shear, or even close to a direct shear. So because the failure plane is here, the failure plane is here. Then this will be similar to a triaxial extension test. Therefore, for perfectly analyzing this problem, one should have the property of the element along this line under triaxial compression, triaxial extension, and direct simple shear. But for all practical purposes, we assume that it is the same. We do any one of the test. So what I mentioned, the previous test is only the triaxial test, but in many situations, one has to understand the consolidation properties as well. So this is typically a consolidation cell. The consolidation cell consists of a small ring, consolidation ring, that we prepare the soil specimen, and on the top we will have a porous stone, at the bottom also we will keep a porous stone. Then on the top we keep a perforated loading plate. Then we assemble this in a consolidation frame and apply the load in steps till the sample consolidates. That means here the first step is we apply about 5 kilopascals, allow it for 24 hours. Then we increase the pressure to the next load, allow it again for 24 hours, increase the pressure again, allow it to 24 hours, and so on. So normally we will go up to about 800 kilopascals. After reaching 800 kilopascals, we unload it in steps, again come back to 5 kilopascals. So normally for completing the test, we need about 10 to 14 days. So during the process, we continuously monitor the time settlement data. So then we have different types of consolidation apparatus. The one I have shown in the previous slide is the conventional conventional consolidation frame, which is much cheaper and has been extensively used for several years. But it has some limitations. To overcome the limitations, other types of apparatus were devised. So the one you see on the left side is a pneumatic consolidation apparatus. On the right side is electromechanical. So the electromechanical is the latest one. It is quite expensive, but it is very, very robust. So you can connect to a computer and continuously you can monitor the data. Then we have the hydraulic consolidation cell, also called as a Rose cell. Here, instead of applying the dead weight, we apply the pressure through hydraulic means. So hydraulic means the sample is here. On top, we will keep a porous disc. Then we fill this portion with water, and we pressurize the chamber so that the pressure gets applied to the sample. So the difference is, instead of applying a dead weight or other means, we use hydraulic pressure. That's why it's called as hydraulic consolidation cell. So the main advantage is we can saturate the sample by back pressure saturation, and also the permeability test can be conducted. We can perform radial consolidation test and so on. So this is the Rose cell that is available in IIT Madras. So one of the major advantages is that we can perform radial consolidation test. We can perform a radially inward consolidation test, or even radially outward consolidation test also is possible. So for performing the radially inward consolidation test, we make a small sand drain at the center, and the top and bottom will be sealed. Then once you apply the load, the water flows through to the center and come out. So this has a lot of applications in getting the consolidation parameters under radial drainage. So that is for PVD designs. That parameter is very much essential. The test can be also conducted in the radially outward direction. So instead of keeping the sand column at the center, we can provide a plastic drain on the side. Then we prepare the soil specimen and perform the test. So the advantage of Rose cell is that we can apply saturation. Many things can be done. We can also apply very high fluid pressure. Yeah, typically from a consolidation test, the parameters we normally determine are the coefficient of consolidation CV, coefficient of secondary compression C alpha from the time settlement data, and from the void ratio log curve. So this is the one. So we calculate the compression index CC, then the pre-consolidation pressure, and the CR, the recompression index or the swelling index. So these are the usual parameters which we determine from a typical one-dimensional consolidation test. So the main advantage of one-dimensional consolidation test is that we have been using the apparatus for several years, maybe 100 years, right from Tessai's first theory. This apparatus is extensively used, and the protocols are all well defined, and the parameters are all highly reliable. But the main limitation is that it takes very long time to perform the test. Therefore, attempts were made in the literature to reduce the duration of test. Okay. The first test they developed is CRS test. That's a constant rate of strain consolidation test. The next test is EOP test. That means end of primary consolidation test. In this test, instead of allowing the sample to consolidate for 24 hours, we wait till the primary consolidation is over. And once the primary consolidation is over, we apply the next load and we get the data. But the EOP test also takes very long time. It takes a few days. Therefore, people attempted to do a rapid consolidation test. One by Professor Sridhar in his rectangular hyperbola method. In IIT Madras, we have developed another method, that's a Ruti method as a rapid consolidation test. So all of us know the Ruti method that is used for determining the coefficient of consolidation CV, but the principle behind that can be used for determining other parameters also. Okay. So coming to the constant rate of strain consolidation test, this is a strain control test. The incremental load consolidation test is a stress control test. The stress control test, we apply a constant load, then we get the deformation over a longer period of time. But in the CRS test, instead of constant rate of strain test, we do instead of stress control test, we do a strain control test. So we apply a known deformation, then measure the load. So the apparatus is shown here. I will go into more details in the subsequent slides. So we need to use a triaxial frame, loading frame, to do the CRS test. It's a consolidation test. We are doing it in a triaxial frame. We apply a known deformation, then you measure the load that comes on the sample, then the deformation we monitor, and we also connect a pore pressure transducer at the bottom to measure the pore pressures. So this slide gives a comparison of incremental load test and the CRS test. The incremental load test is a stress control test. The testing procedure is well established. Then IS code 2720 part 15 and the ASTM codes are all given here. The test takes about 2 weeks to complete. And one of the other limitations is that the number of data points obtained is limited. So what I mean here is we do up to 800 kilopascals. Every loading we get 1 point. Therefore, the pre-consolidation pressure of structured clays may not be accurate. So a graph shown here is a typical void ratio consolidation pressure of a structured clay. So after reaching the pre-consolidation pressure, the deformation will be very rapid. So to capture the correct curve, we need many data points like this. But if you do an incremental load consolidation test, we will get discrete points. And we may miss the important characteristic feature here. Okay. So therefore, the stress control test is often not used for this sensitive clays. So the CRS test is good. The CRS test we get a lot of data points continuously. Every point, it's like a continuous smooth curve, one can get it. But it has some challenges, like fixing strain rate is a problem. The allowable pore pressure ratio is 3 to 15%. So that means we cannot do the test rapidly or slowly. So we have to have a correct strain rate so that the pore pressure ratio remains within 3 to 50%. That's one challenge. Then the testing time is generally less. The main advantage is continuous data points are possible to obtain. And the other limitation is the C alpha, coefficient of secondary compression cannot be obtained. So this is a typical strain controlled test apparatus. We apply a constant deformation, measure the pore water pressure at the bottom, then measure the load that comes on the specimen. Then the effective stress is given by sigma v dash equal to sigma v minus 2/3 of UB. Because this is a single drainage test, only we allow the drainage from the top and the pore pressure we measure at the bottom. So therefore, the pore pressure distribution will be parabolic like this. And so we'll calculate the average effective stress like this. We can also find out the coefficient of consolidation CV. So in the stress control test, we get the time settlement data, then we apply root method or log T method and get the values. But in a strain control test, we use the pore pressure data at the bottom. So if the permeability of the soil is very large, then the pore pressure dissipation will be very rapid. So therefore, the pore pressure at the bottom will be lesser for a low permeable soils and higher for a high permeable soil. So using that, it's possible to get the CV using this formula. So this is the CRS apparatus which we have designed in IIT Madras. The details are given in some of the papers. You can see this is a CRS cell. The sample dimensions are all exactly same as the regular consolidation cell. The difference is that we should be able to measure the pore water pressure at the bottom, and we need a loading frame to apply a constant rate. That's all. Coming to the data, it's a typical data for a Cochin marine clay taken at a depth of 8 meters. The conventional data points are shown here. As I mentioned, we get only discrete points. So these are the data points. But in the CRS test, you can continuously get the data. So this is the data. So more or less, the data are reasonable. So this difference may be due to the sample disturbance, and also the sample may not be uniform because these are all undisturbed soil samples. So the reconstituted soil sample data is shown here. Yeah, so you can see the similar data. So as it's a reconstituted soil, the uniformity is there, therefore we get the data more or less similar. Then it's possible to find out the coefficient of consolidation, as I mentioned, using the formula. The incremental load root method data points are shown here. Using the CRS test, we get these data. The initial portion, there are some error because it's a low stress level and the equilibrium has not taken place. But beyond about 25 kPa, the data points are precise. So one has to ignore the data in the initial point. So that way, from the CRS test, it's possible to get all the consolidation parameters except the coefficient of secondary compression. The permeability also can be determined. The permeability values are more or less of the same order. There is some scatter, but the difference may be due to secondary compression and many other reasons. But for all practical purposes, one can consider this data is reasonable. Then coming to the duration of CRS test, we collected data from various literature, and you see the duration here is not that short. The first sample is about 18 hours is required, others 40 hours, 23 hours, 140 hours, 120 hours. So it requires about 3 days, 4 days for most of the soils. Then we were wondering whether it's possible to do a rapid consolidation test. For that, we attempted the root method as a rapid consolidation test. The procedure I will explain. So what we do is we perform the incremental load consolidation test in the usual way. I collect the data points like this and continuously plot it. Because the initial portion in the root will be a straight line. Then we draw a straight line. So once you know the straight line, we can draw the next line with a slope of 1:1.15. So that is drawn. Afterwards, we keep on doing the test, keep on doing the test till it reaches or till it intersects the line connecting the line with 1.15 times the abscissa. So So that point corresponds to a degree of consolidation of 90%. So then, after reaching 90% degree of consolidation, we apply the next load. That means we are not waiting for the end of primary consolidation, but we apply the next load before the sample reaches 100% consolidation. So then we have to do the interpretation point. So the interpretation is again straightforward. If you apply Tessai's theory, as the primary consolidation is not fully over, there will be little pore water pressure inside the sample. So that can be predicted like this. So this is the residual pore water pressure that was there inside the sample. Therefore, we have to correct the effective stress. The effective stress can be corrected using this formula, sigma v dash equal to sigma v minus 2/3 of um, because this is a parabola. The average is 2/3 um. So um is the mid-plane pore water pressure. So that we can use from the theory. So um equal to 0.157 u0. This is based on Tessai's one-dimensional consolidation. So the difference between the conventional one-dimensional consolidation and the rapid consolidation test is that in the conventional consolidation test, we keep the specimen, keep the load for 24 hours continuously. But in the rapid consolidation test, we do not allow for full consolidation, but we allow for only 90% of the consolidation. Afterwards, we apply the corrections and do the test. So we notice that for most of the clays, the T90 value is 15 to 60 minutes. That means instead of keeping the load for 24 hours, we apply the load only for 60 minutes. So afterwards, we do the regular test. So to validate the procedure, we did a lot of experiments, and the soil samples collected are all shown here. The specimen preparation, this is a routine preparation, and we also did some control test. So these are the typical results. Okay. The conventional consolidation method, the solid circles are those data. So that is with the 24 hours data points. That means we need 10 days to complete this test. But the Madhavaram clay, it took only 2 hours to complete the entire test. So instead of 24 hours, you can complete the data in just 2 hours. So because the Madhavaram clay, the permeability is quite fast, therefore within about 15 minutes, the consolidation is 90% degree of consolidation was achieved. Then for the Bombay marine clay, this permeability is quite low, therefore it requires a little more time. It's a reconstituted soil sample. The duration required is just 4.5 hours. So that means if you start the work in the morning, by noon, we'll be able to complete the consolidation test. And the data points are very, very good. We did the comparisons. The compression index values are shown here. So they are highly reasonable. Then the coefficient of consolidation CV values for many clays were determined. They are also of the same order. Then the pre-consolidation pressure values were obtained for quite a few clays. You can see the values are highly reasonable. So Cochin marine clay, undisturbed sample, the conventional test 85 kPa, the proposed method is 90 kPa. Other two are, so within about 10 to 20% we are able to get the pre-consolidation pressure. So this way it saves very, very, so it will save quite a lot of time. So performing 10 days test, if you can shorten within a day, is very, very good. So we have published this in the Indian Geotechnical Journal, so you can refer it if you are more interested into it. And we also did the time analysis. You can see the time taken to complete the test for most of the soils are shown here. So Madhavaram clay took just 2 hours, and red soil took 8 hours. The Kumdipundi clay is a highly impermeable clay. It took about 30 hours. Apart from that, most of the other soils, you can complete the test within the working day of an hour. Within 8 hours, if you complete the test, that means morning you go to the lab, start the test, evening you finish it, and go out of the lab. So we did this for many clays, and it is working quite well. Okay, any questions on whatever we discussed so far? Anybody would like to discuss?
Participants, now it's an interaction time. If you have any doubts, you can ask with our expert.
Yeah, before going to triaxial test. Okay, in the element testing part, what we discussed is, we discussed 3 types of test. One is the conventional incremental loading consolidation test that takes about 10 days. Then the CRS test, that's a strain control test, that takes about 2 to 3 days. Then the rapid consolidation test using routine method, that test takes just about 8 hours to complete the test. But the data we obtain from all these tests are quite the same. Yeah, then comes the triaxial test. So I'll take about 10 to 15 minutes. Hope this is okay. Is that okay if I take 10 to 15 minutes? Because we lost some time in the morning.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Because triaxial test is also an important test. I think I will skip this. There are 3 types of triaxial test. There is unconsolidated, undrained triaxial test. Then we have consolidated, undrained test, and the drained test. So the triaxial test has 2 stages. The first stage is the consolidation stage. So after assembling the soil sample, we apply all-round confining pressure. That's a stage 1. Then in the stage 1, we can have 2 conditions, whether the drainage valve is open or closed. If the drainage valve is open, we call it as consolidated sample. If the drainage valve is not closed, it is unconsolidated sample. So now in the stage 1 itself, we have 2 types of conditions. That is consolidated sample and unconsolidated sample. Then the second stage is the shearing stage. We apply the deviator stress to cause the specimen to fail. Here also we'll check whether the valve is open or closed. If the valve is open, we call it as drained loading. If the valve is not open, we call it as undrained loading. So these are the 4 conditions we have in stage 1 and stage 2. Now then we have the combinations, right? So if in both the stages the valve is open, that means S means it is consolidated drained triaxial test, CD test. Okay. If in the first stage the valve is open, that means we allowed the sample to consolidate, and in the second stage we did not allow the sample to consolidate, then it is called consolidated undrained triaxial test. Okay. Then the next type of test is unconsolidated undrained test. That means in this test, both the samples, we do not allow the drainage to take place. Right? So I request you to understand this very clearly, because this is one of the very, very important things many practicing engineers miss it, especially the laboratory technicians miss it. They always get confused between UU test and CU test, even the CD test seldom they do, they get confused. Because in a UU test on saturated sample, we get phi equal to 0, and we'll get only cohesion. But in a CU test, we get for over-consolidated clays, we get both cohesion and internal friction. So if you see many reports, if it is done by not a professional technician, they miss up the things, then the analysis will be very difficult and the design engineers will have a lot of problems. Okay? Try to understand this clearly. And some aspects, because I am not going into the details of this, one can do the test by back pressure saturation. Normally, to accelerate the consolidation, we provide side drains surrounding the clay, and the rate of shearing is another important parameter. The UU test, we do it within about 15 minutes. Then the CU test takes a little more time because we'll be measuring the pore water pressure. And finally, the CD test takes very, very long time to consolidate because we have to make sure that the pore pressure is 0 in a CD test. And to get the rate of shearing, we use the initial part of test data. That means the consolidation stage, we monitor the time versus volume change. From that, we calculate the rate of shearing, and using that, we'll determine the rates. Right. So again, here for a regular Traxel test, we need 3 specimens to get to draw the Mohs circle. So therefore, 3 times you have to consolidate the sample. We have to do 3 times the saturation, then 3 times shearing. It takes very long time. Usually, each test takes about 2 days. Therefore, the total test duration will be about 6 days at least for most of the plays. That is one issue. Second issue is if you are doing a field sample, getting 3 identical samples will be very, very difficult. So because the same sampling tube itself, there will be slight variation. Once there is a variation, then getting the clear Mohs circle will be difficult. We may not get a tangential line properly. So to overcome these issues, researchers come up with a multi-stage Traxel test. That means just one sample is enough to get to 3 Mohs circles. I will briefly explain how to do that. The procedure is simple and straightforward. The first stage or the initial phase is very similar to the conventional Traxel testing. We assemble the sample in the Traxel cell, apply the consolidation test, and start shearing. And we stop shearing just before the sample fails. So by the time the sample reaches about 3 to 5% strain, we stop the test. Because in many cases, about 3 to 4% strain itself, it reaches close to the ultimate strain. That means you need not to shear the sample up to 20% strain. If at all it has not reached the ultimate strain, we can assume the initial part as a rectangular hyperbola, and we can get the ultimate values. That means we stop shearing before the sample fails. So with that data, that is the stage 1. Stage 1 data is enough for drawing the first Mohs circle. Then on the same sample, we apply the next confining stress. Okay, so we assume that the sample is as if it is a fresh sample. Allow the sample to consolidate, then shear again. The second stage also, we do not allow the sample to fail. We go for another 3 to 4% or 5% and stop the test. And that data is enough for drawing the second Mohs circle. Then continue the test for the third stage. That means one sample itself, we apply 3 confining stresses and 3 shear. So these are the typical data. For a kyanite sample, conventional test, we go for nearly 15, 16% or even often 20% strain. The multi-stage test, the first sample we stopped at 3% strain. The same sample we consolidated to the next consolidation pressure of 200 kPa. After consolidation is over, sheared again, it reaches here. Then the same sample, we consolidate it to 300, sorry, this is 50, 100, 200. First one is 50, second one is 100, third one is 200 kilopascals. So you can see the values are quite reasonable. For kaolite, it is reasonable, but other high plastic layers, the difference will be a little bit, but that can be corrected. This is pore pressure data. Pore pressure data is also highly reasonable. Then the stress path we plotted, so you can see the data quite closer. Initial part there will be a little scattered, but overall the stress path is quite encouraging. And our students did the work. So you can see the data here. Kaolite, precisely the conventional and multi-stage give the same data. IIT Lake Plain, the difference is just 2 degrees. Silty soil is about 1 degree difference. That means instead of going for 3 samples, it is possible to get failure envelope using just one sample itself by adopting a multi-stage triaxial test. So this testing is okay for normally consolidated soil, but over consolidated soils, there could be issues because the over consolidated samples will fail at very small strains. But researchers did for over consolidated soil sample also, but one should be extremely careful to stop the test in each stage. Because if the brittle failure plane develops afterwards, the result will be in error. Okay. Nevertheless, the data is quite good. Okay. So in this presentation, I talked about physical modeling. So I could not explain the first part properly because of the network issues. Sorry for that. Then I highlighted the problems with the 1G modeling. 1G modeling, the main problem is the self-weight stresses are not comparable to the field stresses. So to bring that stress similar to the prototype, we go for centrifuge modeling. The centrifuge modeling technique, what we do is we keep the test model in a centrifuge, spin it such a way that the stress levels in both the prototype and model are similar. Afterwards, we can do a lot of tests in the centrifuge itself. Automatically, the test can be conducted. Then in the second phase, we discussed about the element testing. So element testing, we take an element of the soil, then apply the stresses to simulate the field condition. Then we evaluate the soil parameters. Those parameters can be used for the mathematical model. Right? So that's about today's presentation. We discussed about the consolidation test. Consolidation test, we briefly discussed about the 3 types: the conventional consolidation test, the incremental load consolidation test, in which we keep the specimen for 24 hours under each load. Then it takes about 10 days to complete the test. Then the next test is a CRS test, constant rate of strain consolidation test. That is faster than the incremental load test, but still it takes time. The advantage of CRS test is that we get a continuous E-log P curve is possible to obtain, but in incremental load, we get discrete points. Then we also discussed about the routine method as a rapid consolidation testing procedure. So one can get the data within a day, consolidation parameters, but we cannot get the C alpha, the coefficient of secondary compression, but all other parameters one can obtain from these tests. Then we discussed about the triaxial test. Triaxial test, conventional test, we do 3 samples. Usually take about a week, 6 days. But if the number of samples available are less, then it's possible to obtain the parameters by multi-stage triaxial testing using only one sample itself. Yeah, I have to acknowledge my students who did all the hard work. Rahina, she did a lot of work on the CRS test. Rakesh and Lini did some multi-stage triaxial testing. Okay. So thank you very much. And once again, sorry for the initial phase. Otherwise, I'm not fully happy with the way I presented the first part, but I did not have any control. Sorry for that. So any queries, any questions?
Thank you, sir. Sir, you did tell about one video presentation regarding centrifuge. Will you
Yeah.
show that?
Shall I try? Yeah, so this is the centrifuge in running. Okay. The soil sample will be placed here, I mean the model, then it will be rotated in the centrifuge. I'll see one more. Yeah, this is a tunnel interaction study, quite interesting. I will explain again. So the student wanted to study how the soil moves when a tunnel collapses. So for that, they made a tunnel. This is made up of a thermocol. Then it was connected to acetone tube. A tube will be there. So then when the centrifuge is running, the tube was open and the acetone, the thermocol dissolves in acetone. So that is very similar to simulating a tunnel collapse. You can see the crater formation on the top. See, very nicely it fails there. and these beads were provided on the front side of the container, and one can take the images and track the movement of those particles. See very clearly the zone of depression on the top, and the movement of the soil throughout can be studied. So later, many students with movement of piles due to tunnel collapse. So what they do is we keep some piles installed around here. Okay. So then you can allow the tunnel to collapse. The movement of the piles, the soil, and the bending moment on the piles all can be determined. Okay, so that's about the video I wanted to share with you. So any questions?
Thank you, sir. Participants, if you have any questions, you can raise it right now.
I could see many of my friends. Anil is there. Balu.
Yes, sir. Anil sir is
Good morning, good morning, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Balu is there. Veena is there. So any questions?
Participants, if you have any questions, you may raise it right now. You can scribble it down the chat box also.
Yeah, if no
We have no
questions, thanks a lot.
questions.
Yeah.
Let's wind up this section. Thank you, Robinson, sir. Thank you for that informative session. Thank you for sparing time for us. It was a really effective class. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Dear participants, we shall wind up now. The second session will start at 11:30. The next session will be handled by Dr. Anil Joseph. He's the Managing Director of Geostructural Private Limited Kerala, one of the leading consulting firms of the state, and he will handle a session about applications of soil structure interaction in design of high-rise structures. So thank you for joining. We shall start the second session at 11:30. Thank you. Thank you all.
So thank you all. So we'll meet sometimes, Dr. Anil.
Yeah, sure, sir. Need all your support for IGC 2022.
Yeah, sure. I'm always there.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, good day. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And sir, we are taking a break. Shall
Yeah,
I-
fine. 11:30 I will join back.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.